Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. I see we have no regrets for this evening, a full house in fact. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I'd like to declare an interest in item number 7 as the settlement involved includes the adjacent property where a Tim Hortons is currently the primary use, and my spouse is employed by TDL Group, which is the operator for Tim Hortons. And likewise, I'd like to declare an interest in Section 6E of the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes, which is item 9 of tonight's agenda. And if you could separate that piece of the minutes, that'd be appreciated.
No problem. All right, I'd like to announce that there is an additional item, C2, being added to the agenda in accordance with our procedure bylaw. C2 is a time-sensitive matter which, if not dealt with, may have serious ramifications, which is determined by the mayor in consultation with the clerk, and it has so been determined. And so we will take that up when we get to the section of the meeting for new items. And with that, I would ask if there are two councillors who'd like to move and second at Committee of the Whole. Councillor Elgar, Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. We are in Committee of the Whole. And the first the first 4 items on our agenda are the consent items. The assumption of the subdivision in Lakeshore Woods, Phase 6, the assumption of the subdivision plan in Saberwood, Joshua's Creek, Phase 1, and the assumption of subdivision in Lakeshore Woods, Phase 9, and the heritage designation bylaw and bylaw to enter into a heritage easement agreement for 3369 6th line. Council, how do you wish to proceed? Councillor Johnston. Councillor Johnston moves the consent items. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? They are adopted. That brings us to our first confidential consent item. If you need to go into camera for this item, I would suggest that we slip it down the agenda to the end. Otherwise, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Grant.
I'll move the staff recommendation, C1.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. That brings us to the first public hearing item, which is the removal of a holding H provision on Fox Farm developments. And for a public hearing, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submission to the Town of Oakville in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and/or plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Town Council to the Ontario Municipal Board and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the Board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And in terms of this item, we have a presentation from planning if it's required from any member of council. And let me first start with council before I poll the audience. Councillor Elgar.
Councillor Lapworth and I do not require a staff presentation unless there's someone in the audience that would like it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Are there any members of the public with information for council on this item on the agenda tonight?
Sorry, I'm representing Fox Farm Developments.
Yes.
I'm here if there's any questions related to the application. We're happy with it. We're fully supportive of the staff report. We're just here to answer any questions if council may have any.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Fox Farm? Is there a motion? Yeah. Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, we'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
Councillor Elgar moves approval of the staff recommendation. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. That brings us to the proposed draft plan of condominium for 2370 Wycroft Road, item 6 on this agenda. And again, if required, there is a presentation. Council, what is your pleasure? Councillor Robinson.
I believe Councillor Robinson and Johnson don't require a presentation.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public here with information for council on this matter? Thank you. Is there a motion? Councillor Johnston moves the staff recommendation. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is adopted. That brings us to our discussion item, the notice of intention to demolish 131 Trafalgar Road, on which Councillor Adams has declared a conflict and will not be participating. There is a recommendation before you that the notice of intention to demolish for 131 Trafalgar be received. Is there discussion or a motion? I guess I should ask for a motion first. Councillor Knoll?
I'll move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That brings us to the Heritage Oakville minutes and the heritage permit for 334 Reynolds Street. And the recommendation is that the heritage permit application for removal of the one-story addition and construction of a new one-story addition at 334 Reynolds Street, as attached in Appendix A to the report dated April 15th from Planning Services, be approved, subject to the following. A, that the revised drawings attached as Appendix D replace the original drawings in Appendix A labeled elevation from left side and elevation rear right side, excuse me. 2, that any changes to the existing proposal which are considered by staff to be minor in nature be submitted to Planning Services Heritage for final approval. And 3, that this heritage permit expire 2 years from the date of final approval by council. As I understand it, we have delegations registered on this matter. And Madam Clerk, would you like to call the first delegation?
Would they like a staff report?
Oh, is there a requirement for a staff report?
If they would.
Carolyn Van Slichtenhorst is available with a presentation if you require it, Council. Councillor Adams?
I'd like to see it, given I believe there's going to be some discussion about it.
Ms. Slichtenhorst? Oh, all right.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead. We can change the roster. It's not a problem.
Fine. There you go. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The property in question is 334 Reynolds Street. This is a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It's in the Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. The heritage permit application is to remove a one-story addition off of the back and to build a new wheelchair-accessible one-story addition. Staff brought forward this application to Heritage Oakville on April 12th, and Heritage Oakville recommended some changes to that application. The property owners have since then submitted revised plans that accommodate 2 of the 3 recommendations of the Heritage Oakville Committee. The 3 recommendations were, the first one was a change to the pitch, the roof pitch on the new addition. The second change was a small change to the roof line on the porch of the new addition. And the third change was to ensure that all windows conform to the same size and proportions as they did on the original body of the historic portion of the house. The revised plans that the applicant has submitted accommodate those first 2 recommendations, and so they have brought the pitch of the roof in line with the recommendations of Heritage Oakville, and they've also made the change to the porch roof as well. However, the applicants have chosen to retain the proportions of one small window on the north elevation. This window is not visible from the street, and it is intended to provide light and ventilation while maintaining privacy, because this is actually in a wheelchair-accessible shower stall. As the entire point of this new addition is to provide wheelchair-accessible accommodations for the applicant's daughter. So this is the one outstanding item, the small window on the north side. You can see here. And Heritage Planning staff have noted that the subject window is not visible from the streetscape, and it will not in any way compromise the heritage character of the property or of the Heritage Conservation District. And it's important to note that this is a district property, and the primary concern is what is visible from the streetscape. The recommendation of Heritage Oakville to create a full-size double-hung sash window wouldn't be suitable in this particular location, as it compromises the dignity and the comfort of the user of the facility. Conserving heritage structures must be appropriately balanced with basic human rights, including accessibility for persons with disabilities, and heritage planning staff recognize this in the application. And therefore, our recommendation, as you read out earlier, accommodates the 2 of the 3 changes that Heritage Oakville recommended, but retain the 1 small window on the north side of the building in order to provide privacy in a wheelchair-accessible shower stall.
Thank you very much for the report, and I think both the applicant and Heritage Planning staff are to be commended for the good sense shown here. Would we now call the first delegation?
The first delegation is Mr. John Contini, the property owner.
Mr. Contini, welcome to the meeting. We look forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate your last comment. I am the spouse of the registered owner, Mr. DeBeer, who is our contractor, is here as well. And I also brought along my daughter, Elizabeth, who is the subject, if you will, of the renovations. We are supportive of Ms. Shepard's submission and staff's position, and we intended primarily to answer questions if the councilors have any.
Thank you very much for being available, and we'll see if there are any. Council, how do you wish to proceed? Councillor Elgar.
Move staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Congratulations. And thank you for your attendance. All right, Council, that brings you to the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee minutes, and we'll just have to make a small change to your agenda where you read 9D, I'm sorry, where you read 6D, the action instead of approval and so on will be receipt. So we will have the clerk adjust the language to show that what we're doing there is receiving this part of the Advisory Committee minutes. And we will still have the approval that's asked for here in item number 9 for 6C, and we will separate 6E so that Councillor Adams doesn't participate in that, and we'll call that separately without him. So may I have a mover for item 9 as adjusted? Councillor Johnston. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. And we now come to item 6E, on which Councillor Adams has declared a conflict and is not participating. I need a mover. Councillor Johnston, thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That is adopted. We now need a motion to rise and report to Council. Councillor Duddick, thank you. All in favor? Oh, wait. Let me see. Where did we? On my agenda, it says.
It's not in there yet because it's new.
Right, and
It's a C2 here.
no, we were going to do C2 here.
Okay.
We're headed for new business. Okay, so we need a mover. Councillor Duddick has moved that we rise and report. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1, 2, 3, and 4, confidential consent item C1, public hearing items 5 and 6, and discussion items 7 and 8, and advisory committee minutes, item 9, as noted by the clerk and amended. We need a mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Johnston, Councillor Robinson, all in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. And now, under new business, we have this matter which, where did that other sheet go? Right. Thank you. We have this confidential item which is of a time-sensitive nature and if not dealt with may have serious ramifications as has been determined according to the procedure bylaw by the mayor in consultation with the clerk. And I would now ask for a mover or seconder to enter a closed session for the purpose of considering this litigation. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Knoll, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And we now need to rig the chamber for the... All right, welcome back to the public session of Council. Council has met in camera for the purpose of considering a matter subject to litigation under the provisions of the Municipal Act for meeting in camera. And legal staff have been instructed to present to the Ontario Municipal Board modifications to the livable Oakville plan detailed in a legal report received by council. And that now brings us, council, to any other new business of a congratulatory or condolence nature. Seeing none, a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws would be welcome. Councillor Dudek? Councillor Demoff, thank you. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That was authority for bylaw 2011-33, a bylaw to designate the Balbear House at 3369 6th Line as a property of historical, architectural, and/or contextual significance. Bylaw 2011-38, a bylaw to assume a registered plan. Bylaw 2011-40 and 2011-41, also bylaws to assume registered plans. 2011-46, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a heritage easement agreement for the Balbear House. And bylaw 2011-52, a bylaw to declare that certain land is not subject to part lot control in Fox Farm developments. And 2011-56, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting of council. I thank you all for your time and attention. That ends our agenda, and we are adjourned.